Leave him on audio. We don't need to cut to Noonan. We'll cut to the wide. Noonan, you can be like the great Oz here. Hit us with a draft prop.
Oh, did he go?
He left. Do you work with this guy every day?
Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Go to Underdog Fantasy right now. Get yourself a match deposit of $100 and be on your way. Of course, and there's going to be a ton of stuff that you can play some overs, some unders, or do some best ball drafts on because we're getting to that time of the year. I've been doing way too much golf recently, so we need to pivot back into football. If you do like that, smash the like to the episode, share it around, and download, review, and subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast. We're going to be talking about a lifetime ban in the NBA as well, just kind of running the gamut on everything, plus the NFL draft props that you need to get in on. I am not in on any as of this point, so I had to bring in the crew who knows about these things. From BetSperts, the team themselves were reunited once again. We used to do a prop drop show on BetSperts, but we did not last year, so we have to get together and talk about something. Connor Allen, Ryan Noonan from BetSperts. What's going on, guys?
Oh man, it's great to talk draft props. Appreciate having us on, Pat. This is something that we've been deep in the weeds on, probably way too early before markets were even really you bet that much on it. But now is a great time to get in. Honestly, there's tons of props up, so it's no better time than now to start betting on it.
Yeah, are you as deep into this, Noonan, as Connor is?
Oh, first of all, reunited, and it feels so good, Pat. I miss your scent. I miss your musk. When this whole thing blows over, we should get an apartment together. I'm probably not in the weeds as much as Connor, but I probably am in. I still would think I'm in the weeds like you. I'm multitasking in the golf streets as well. So we've been doing Move the Line draft specific shows since the Super Bowl ended weekly. We are kind of turning up the volume to 13 this week and knocking out a couple. Next week, probably 3 shows. So we are very much dialed in and plugged in. And, it's definitely an interesting market this season. I think the books have come back a little bit compared to years past. Last year, they were very reluctant to post anything. It's been a little bit better this year. So excited to talk today with you about it.
It's funny. I was at Circa over the weekend, and I left on the Monday almost the moment they dropped the draft props. And we were speaking to some of the people who were around, and it was kind of well known that because of people like Connor who have been doing this now and trying to dig in for like 3 months, that it seems like books are a bit more pensive to actually drop the draft props at this point, which kind of ties in weirdly enough because a case that someone made to me was they were trying to get like WWE regulated in certain states, obviously with limits to it. It's like, well, how can you ever regulate that? That is a question someone knows the answer to. Technically on these draft props, Connor, people do know the answer to it.
Yeah, and that's I think one of the best ways to go about it. It's something that we value more than most. Like it's not about our valuations of players. It's so much more about the information that's coming out and what teams will do, because you can have the best read on a game, you can have the best read on a prop, but at the end of the day, it's still a sport that needs to be played. The NFL draft, nothing needs to happen. If you know that a team's picking this guy, they're picking this guy. Like they're turning the card in. That's it. And that's why I love betting on this draft so much, just because you can have an edge and it's like a legitimate edge, not hypothetical based on something that is going to still happen.
Yeah. And Noonan, basically, it seems like most places have set pretty hard limits on what you can win now.
That's part of it too. And that's hard for us early, even when we feel like we have some edges early in, and it could be a limitation. It could be a single book limit, which is a problem for us as well. Like we really try to adhere to some, I think, rules that I think help us for subscribers. Like we are pushing plays out to a subscriber base that pays for that. So when we don't give them the optionality to have the ability to get more than $50 down and you only have one book to get it down at, that's problematic too. So there are things that maybe we have maybe a little bit of sprinkling on that we wish we could have had bigger sizes on. That's, I think, maybe opening up a little bit more. And then you start to have optionality with books that helps too. That's probably a unique thing that, we have as a pick provider, I guess, in this sense. But as Connor said, like I think there's an art to reading the tea leaves as well. And then we do have some scenarios where connections through the league, connections through people that have connections through the league, where we will have answers to the test in a handful of spots. And part of it becomes not even just the answer to that specific question, but how there's a trickle down effect and how that can lead to others. A couple of years ago, we had really strong information about, Tavon Walker being the number 1 pick to Jacksonville. Well, it wasn't just the Tavon Walker stuff. We were then able to hammer plus money on Aiden Hutchinson to not go 1 because he was the consensus chalk. So once we get some answers here in the next couple of days, hopefully there's just a trickle down effect that leads to a lot of nice opportunistic bets.
Well, this leads us into something when you have the answers to the test. I saw Woj reported it, Shams reported it. The NBA has suspended Jontay Porter for life. He basically joined the NWO of being banned from playing NBA basketball ever again. Now, Connor, he was probably going to be banned for life anyway because he wasn't very good. So that's basically like being banned when you're just cut from a team and never get a chance to play again. I wish I could have won money on making this bet because I came on the show and I said, this is likely what is going to happen. They're going to ban him for life to set an example. Hell, they might even have set this up so they could have made an example out of him because his name isn't LeBron James. Hell, he's not even like a mid-level exception guy. He's a nobody. Why wouldn't you ban this guy for life to set an example that you do not do this in basketball? And that's exactly what happened. I'm frankly shocked it took so long to ban him for life.
Yeah, because to be honest, like we've seen other stories with like Calvin Ridley or certain things where they're betting like, a parlay on a couple of teams. I mean, this guy's parlaying his unders and going into Discord saying, you should be playing all of my unders tonight. Like, I'm not going to play. That is a very clear lifetime ban scenario where he is using direct information on himself to potentially, win as much money as he could. So yeah, I totally agree. Lifetime ban makes a ton of sense. And it's, for the NBA, it's a no-brainer. Like you said, he's not like a LeBron James or anything else. You're not losing any entertainment value by not having Jontay Porter in the league. You're just making an example, and no one else now is going to gamble, at least like that. I'm sure there'll be other instances of gambling on other sports or gambling in the NBA eventually, but it definitely won't be in this sense.
At the time, Noonan, I talked about how regulated betting, weirdly, is better for these leagues. It might flush some of this stuff out to the surface a little bit more. But I think in an unregulated market, this guy just gets away with it.
Without a doubt. I mean, look, Pete Rose bet on himself back in the day, right? He was betting on his team, on the Reds to win games, and obviously has a lifetime ban. Things have changed. Obviously, the climate is so different now, 30 years removed from that. But it's sad in a sense. Like, this is obviously a fringe NBA player that's grinded his nuts off to get to even be a G League player, get a 10-day contract, and was trying to just make as much money as he possibly could to get there. And just it's a sad story, but like you said, like you spot on with this, you have to make an example of him. This is the perfect player archetype that would make this type of gamble, right? Where he isn't set for life. He doesn't have a multi-year contract. He's not flush with cash. He's just trying to leverage any information he had possible, and he obviously had the best information on himself. Terrible for the kid, but the right example for the league. Obviously, it is. This is exactly why leagues didn't want to put teams in Vegas. We didn't want to have legalized sports betting for a long time. So when these things come like this, you have to nip them in the bud right away. So yeah, he's an example, and I think it does probably curtail some of that in the NBA and probably trickle down effect to some other leagues as well.
Well, I mean, now it sets the precedent for the NBA that if you do this, and I do think it may have been a different story because you hit on it. Pete Rose bet on himself to win games. If Porter was betting the overs or betting on the Raptors, not betting his unders and taking himself out, I think that people just have a completely different view of how this went down. Not that it would be anything different. It is exactly the same of betting on yourself, but actively tanking a game just does not sit well with people, Connor.
No, yeah, and you brought up a good point too about it being since gambling is legalized, like they detected this. I mean, the old days, if this happened 5-6 years ago, no one would have known about it because it would have been through, offshores or locals or whatever, derivative you want to go through. And I think that's actually an argument for like pro gambling being good because you weed out these people who would have likely had access to do stuff like this anyways. And now it just comes to the surface a lot easier. So I think that it's, again, like people are viewing it as an anti-gambling thing because it happened, but I view it almost as a pro-gambling thing because gambling's legalized is essentially the only way that they found out about it unless, there are other ways to find out. Obviously, people have gotten caught, but it's just a lot less rare.
Yeah, I really wanted to talk about this too. And it's just funny that it happened at the same time that we were going to talk about draft props, Noonan, because I do feel like a scandal in the NFL happens here. And maybe that because of the capped limits that we talked about, that can't actually happen. If someone wins 10 grand inside of a front office because they know what's going to happen, the league probably overlooks it instead of having the bad press about it. Unless that person is going into a Discord selling the picks on top of it, then we got real problems. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know if you work in a front office or not, Noonan, but if you're also giving your subs picks about what's also happening with the Bears at the same time, that might be a bit of a different story. But it feels like this is a market that can be manipulated in that same way.
That's a great point. And having the limitations does probably help. Would be a fast way to get yourself kicked out of a nice job, to have that inside information, to be in the war room, quote unquote, and whether that's to capitalize it for yourself or to leak that information that could be valuable to people like us who then can capitalize on it. That's obviously a problematic situation as well. So yeah, Connor's completely right. Having lights shined on it, having it be legal, puts us in a spot where, it makes point shavings, it makes those things like far less likely to happen, because it's just, we have more transparency. Like, you have to sign in, you have to geolocate, you have to have, like, you can't cash out these things that are tied to your social security number. Like, it just is way harder to do it in a legal market. So yeah, this being an information market, yeah, very ripe for these types of things. I wouldn't be surprised if it had maybe happened at a low level in the past, but luckily no one has got caught with it yet. But it's definitely more so than even a game. Like, the game still has to happen. Like, this kid was going out, taking unders and leaving with like a tummy bug, like just absolute low key, terrible way to go down. Like, this is a very easy way to do it. So yeah, you make a good point. Another good reason to have limitations on what we can get down, unfortunately.
Well, the other thing is, well, I mean, I get the limits, but would it even be something you could be banned for, Connor, or be illegal? That if I was Jerry Jones's hanger-on grandson or something like that, and I knew exactly who the Cowboys were going to pick, I knew that, and then I went and bet that. That doesn't change the pick. I just knew what it was going to be. I mean, that's really no different than what we're trying to do anyway, so maybe it's not the same, now that I kind of talk it through.
Yeah, I don't think it's illegal. I mean, it's definitely certainly not illegal by, the law, because obviously some equated to, like, yeah, it's frowned upon. And I think it's different too. Like, if Jerry Jones' nephew told me the pick, like, he's technically not betting on it. He's just leaking inside information. The NFL maybe gives him a little slap on the wrist and is like, hey, don't do that, But like, if he's going and actively betting on that, I mean, they probably wouldn't be too happy. But again, like, I mean, I don't think they would get a lifetime ban or anything. I really don't think that would be the case. So I think it's just a different market, different situation here. And maybe the lens that it's viewed in, publicly would be different too. But I guess we just gotta, see if someone does that and to find out, because I'm interested to see how they would approach it.
I honestly think this all depends on who did it and who did it first, in a weird way, because Calvin Ridley gets suspended he wasn't even on the team at the time. He was off on injured reserve sitting at home. So there was nothing like he may have had inside info, but he couldn't actually affect what was happening in the game because he was sitting watching on his couch. And it really sounded like everyone else who sits on their couch on a Sunday who makes any sort of degen. It was like a 7-game parlay. And he was trying to support his guys. Let's throw the Falcons into that one. Like, some of the guys who got busted on the Lions weren't even betting on NFL. They were betting on like college football or college basketball. They were just doing it inside of an NFL stadium, which is illegal per the league, or it violates the league rules, but they weren't actually betting on the NFL from that sense. But again, like I said, Brian, that if this isn't Jontay Porter and it's someone you've actually ever heard of, I do think the suspension is different.
Look what happened in Major League Baseball. Like no, they did not want anything to do with the Shohei Ohtani stuff, right? Like, even that came out within hours. Like, MLB was like, we're not even investigating. It's not even him. It's just this guy. He was duped. It was fraud, theft. Like, because what a black eye. You don't even want to look. It's what the Schroeder's cat. You don't want to open the box and see if the cat's dead or alive when it's your superstar. It is your like absolute like marquee dude. So yeah, if this is LeBron James or Jason Tatum or Kevin Durant, like, that's a totally different beast in a very interesting bridge to cross. If they happen to come there, this probably prevents that from happening. But like, yeah, baseball was like, no, he's fine. This guy is like, he didn't do anything. I can't believe it. I can't believe this guy that has been in the dugout and hanging out with him for this long would be able to rip off millions for him, like, without him knowing. Like, what a terrible person. Just kind of like, we don't want to acknowledge that it possibly could be our superstar in a kind of dying sport to begin with. So yeah, I think you make a great example. Porter is kind of unique, and unfortunate for him, he gets to be the guinea pig.
Well, I mean, I would be wanting to, if they were tracking his bank accounts anyway, to see what he won. Connor, I'd be curious to track his bank accounts now to see if he got some sort of huge lump sum from the NBA. Be like, take the fall, you're going to be banned for life, go down without a fight. Here's a bunch of money to compensate for it, but you get to be the guinea pig. You get to be the example, the human sacrifice to this to make everything okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I don't know if they did that, but I think that would be interesting, and like just pay him out just to be like, this is it, you're done. Because I mean, what's he gonna do now? Like go back to the Discord and just try and use his information to like keep selling his picks. I mean, I would join. I mean, if he's giving out whatever for other people, he probably still has some connections there. But yeah, no, it's something that I think they are definitely made an example of. And the Shohei Ohtani stuff, I mean, I thought he was like using it as a fall guy, right? I mean, is that the consensus opinion at this point or no?
I didn't read the FBI release, but apparently from the FBI release, based on like the Coles Notes version that I saw of it, is that he didn't have a clue what was going on. The guy was like actively stealing money from him. That's what the FBI found.
Millions of dollars. Ohtani is then the dumbest person that we've ever encountered
hold
in professional sports.
I disagree, because I have a friend who is worth like a lot of money, into like the 9 figures worth of money. Dude, it doesn't touch his own bank accounts. He has like an account that like he has money in that he can spend. Like other people take care of that for him. Like you're not the one who's actively monitoring your bank accounts once you get to a certain level of money. I assume that would be the same case with Ohtani.
So, but like it was his interpreter though, like I totally agree that it was someone that's probably actively managing his money, but like, you think the interpreter would probably like went to them and was like, hey, I'm giving this money to Shohei. And then like, he just never knew about it. I don't know. I feel like it's a really tough.
It feels that way, but I mean, I think there was one part of it too, where he called the bank just pretending to be him. And they were like, yeah, sure. Why not? Sounds enough like Ohtani. Good enough. You have millions of dollars. I'm sure that,
I know
it feels like it's a cover up, but it doesn't. None of the evidence that was presented, it seems, from that, and again, I didn't read however many pages. Morency was kind of like my big guy on this. He's kind of scanned through it, but it didn't seem like there was a ton actually pointing to a cover-up. Like, why would the FBI lie about a Japanese baseball player?
No, a lot of the stuff that's come out has continued to exonerate him, I think, and it's good. It just is very strange because, to your point, massive amounts of money. And maybe you're right. I don't have massive amounts of money. I don't have anyone else monitoring my account. It's my wife and I, and that's it. I would notice if there was, large chunks of money. I don't know what percentage of, tens of millions of dollars is in his account, or why these people would have access to it. But insane that it just seemed like right away, before we even had the FBI account, MLB was like, man, we're not even looking into this. This is just like, this is not a thing. And I get it. I would be petrified if you get that report and it comes in and it's like, oh, Ohtani of all people being linked to this type of gambling account. It's just nuts. But yeah, I mean, he's wealthy beyond my reach and what I would know. And you probably make a good point.
Well, I think a lot of it too with Major League Baseball passing on doing an investigation. I think because they knew the FBI was doing an investigation. Like, what are we going to do?
Yeah, no, that's true. We can't even figure out the All-Star game or attendance or how to grow the game outside of local markets. So they got bigger fish to fry. Let's
talk about the props then. Connor, where is the softest spot in the market right now, do you think, as we record this?
I think over-unders that are dropping are generally the most soft. So we're looking at, I think, betting on an over-under such as we'll start at, JJ McCarthy over-under 5.5. So just preface this. I don't think that JJ McCarthy is an awesome prospect, but I don't think that really matters. We've had steam now for months that JJ McCarthy is going to be a top 5 pick. You have him in multiple spots here, potentially teams trading up into the top 5 for him. Pick number 4 with the Cardinals here. We're looking at them potentially motivated to trade out of number 4. Pick number 5 with the Chargers. We have them very motivated to trade out of number 5. They're only linked to basically offensive linemen and defenders. The only offensive lineman projected to go in the top 10 is Joe Alton. He's a left tackle. They already have Rashawn Slater as well, who would have to move over to the right side. He hasn't played right tackle since 2019 in Northwestern. So I think that there's a lot of potential to trade down. And then you have 4 teams looking to trade up in the Giants, in the Raiders, in the Broncos, and most notably in the Vikings, who already have a second first-round pick. So like I think a market like that and over-unders are really good because you have, I think, 2 outs there at 4 or 5 potentially and 4 teams who could trade up for him. And there's a little bit of juice, but I think we're still looking at like minus 150 pretty universally, which I think is way too short for what this is going to be.
So what do you think that you would price that at? Because I'm seeing it right now at minus 150 as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're closer to like a 75% chance of someone trading up to JJ McCarthy, which sounds again outrageously high, but significantly more than market.
Noonan, how do you, just from a real football perspective, how do you feel about that? Let's say it is the Vikings who trade up for JJ McCarthy. As a fan, how do you feel about these sorts of things, of him maybe playing in a division with other teams that you like?
From a landing spot, I think it's a great landing spot, right? I think outside of Caleb Williams, who I think has maybe separated himself, and Chicago is obviously doing some great things to boost the team around him, and they have another pick, obviously, at 9 where they can continue to do that. I think the landing spot that's the best for a quarterback is Minnesota, if they were happen to be able to trade up and get one of these guys, because I think we feel pretty good about Kevin O'Connell as a play caller. The offensive line is pretty solid. You have Justin Jefferson in terms of just ready-made offensive weapons. TJ Hawkinson there as well. So just a nice offense to kind of walk into. Now, to Connor's point, you somewhat have to divorce yourself from player takes in draft betting. And look, I talked about it on our show yesterday. Like, the NFL historically is absolutely terrible at identifying quarterback prospects. Just like hit rate is like 50% at best over the last handful of years in terms of who can be a viable starter, get to that second contract. No one's good at it. Why am I going to pretend to be super good at that when like the league who does it for a living can't do it? So all I know is we didn't get enough of a sample of JJ McCarthy because of whatever he was asked to do was limited. But to sit here and like say, I know that he's a terrible player because on big boards in January, he was like in the 20s or 30s is kind of a fool's errand. So have to adapt to the new information. And I think in terms of what we've seen, he's tested well. I've maintained the entire time there was no way that guy was going to sit in front of teams or go on a whiteboard and not impress. He's been kind of a boxed quarterback prospect, future NFL quarterback since he was like a preteen. He actually grew up in the area here where Connor and I are from. He's a Chicago area kid. I have my brother-in-law is really good friends with his dad. Like, I've been hearing about this kid since he was in high school. So I'm a little bit over JJ McCarthy. I was almost cheering against the kid because I'm just like, I'm so tired of JJ McCarthy. I've been hearing about him forever. But look, he won a national title. He's polished. He has all those things, those intangibles that we can't measure, and the league's terrible at doing it. So I think there's enough steam here where he's separated himself and kind of put himself in that top tier of quarterbacks. And there's enough needy teams that need to get up there to get him because he's just not going to fall. Like, Minnesota can't sit there at 11 and have him come there because it makes it easier for Denver, Las Vegas, some of those other teams to jump ahead of him. So yeah, I think under 5.5, I still feel is worth laying the juice. And that's another thing here that's really important. We did a prop show together. We love to do like to get plus money on some bigger things. And like typically laying juice is not something that a lot of people like to do. Information markets, I think, are really different. And yeah, something might be minus 170 or minus 225. And that's really uncomfortable and maybe unusual for what we would like to do in betting. But like when the actual probability is way closer than what minus 220 is telling you, then I think you have to maybe be pliable in draft prop betting more so than if you're just betting a binary prop or a side or a total like we would typically do. I think it's okay laying a little bit of juice if you feel super good about that. Like, what's the number on the Saints to draft an offensive lineman right now, Connor? It's like minus 300. Like, the Saints aren't leaving the first round without an offensive lineman. So if you have a bankroll that can stomach a little bit of minus 300 or whatever, like, lay on the Saints to take an offensive lineman. Like, there's no way they're not doing that. So it's just kind of a unique space.
Are there any longer shot bets? Because, I mean, what Noonan just pointed out is absolutely correct, Connor. That doesn't change the fact that I want to see a big plus next to it, maybe like win a bunch of money if I hit anything. I know that most of that sort of value happens in January and February. That's why you're doing it and doing shows basically since the Super Bowl ends to try to catch these guys, be ahead of the market, and end up with a big 7-1 or hell, 20-1, 50-1 on who the first corner taken is or whatever it might be. That's probably beat out of the market. I mean, I know that's beat out of the market right now, or else everyone would just be betting this from right now to the moment I try to log on 5 minutes from now, and then it would be minus 125 or something like that. But are there still things in the plus 150, 2-1 range that are still out there that you think are pretty good bets?
I think there's a couple actually that could still be considered longer shots that are not fully bet into yet. So we'll start at the top here. So some sportsbooks have exactas. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 1, 2, 3. And so if you go through the thought exercise of like, okay, Jaden Daniels has been getting a ton of steam to go number 2. He's like minus 300 overall, but I don't think it's really a done deal yet, to be honest. And so like, I think that it could be a done deal, but I really don't think so based on what we've seen so far. And so if you go through the thought process of, okay, if it's Drake May at 2 and then Jaden Daniels at 3, that is like plus 450 on certain spots. If you go through the thought exercise of, okay, well, if that happens, then pick number 4 is probably either Marvin Harrison Jr. or JJ McCarthy. Pick number 5 is either Marvin Harrison Jr. or JJ McCarthy. We're talking about like 25 or 30 to 1 on those different kind of thought exercises there. So now again, that could be wrong because Jaden Daniels could be locked into number 2, but all of the key reporters who have talked about this have left themselves pretty key outs with their verbiage and have been, pretty loose. Maybe it's because they don't want to tip the pick, but at the same time, Adam Peters in this front office, we know comes from San Francisco. They did a great job with the whole Mac Jones, Trey Lance thing and keeping that under wraps until about 24 hours before. So I think that is an interesting way to approach it. And then one other one, Troy Fautanu to go number 10 overall to the Jets. We're looking at that being like 10 to 1. They're really popular right now with Brock Bowers. I'm just, based on what I'm hearing, I'm not buying it that they'll go with an offensive lineman, which again, if Joe Alt's on the board, they probably go Joe Alt. But I think Joe Alt goes before that. So we're looking at not Bowers. Joe Alt goes before that. And Fautanu is probably the pick at 10 to 1. So I think that there's a couple of different moving parts there, but just those are two of the markets that I still have penciled that I think that there's some potential interesting value on longer shots.
I 10 to 1. So it was like Big Troy is getting my money. And then Noonan, I get to hear about how good he is from Cust, who has never seen him play before.
Yeah, Hall of Fame instantly. Build a statue for him and Rodgers next to the Rodgers statue for sure. I'm sure. Well, Cust is doing okay. I mean, I assume he's the friend you were talking about. That's absolutely flush with cash. That's not you looking in his own bank account, right? It's got the heated driveway and all the good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the sneaky little thing about Cust that people don't know. He has a net worth of $400 million, and he doesn't know how to use online banking, so he can't track this stuff.
People spend a lot of money on dinner and food, and when you just live that McDonald's lifestyle, you can stash it away.
He's done very well at McDonald's Monopoly over the years, as it turns out. That he's like that guy from the McMillions documentary. It's just no one has caught him yet. He's just winning Dodge Vipers and $1 million cash prizes. It's perfect for Cust, and no one ever suspects him because he seems so inept with everything. And that is how he's grown his net worth. I'm actually working on different cases. I'm trying to figure out why. I think the Jets are going to be all right this year, but why are they going to blow it? I think I've centered on Aaron Rodgers just might be terrible this year. And no one seems to bring this up.
He wasn't great as last year in Green Bay. Now we're coming off of a pretty massive injury. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's something to it.
Connor, he's 41.
Yeah, I mean, that's really old for NFL standards. I mean, that is ancient, I would say, by NFL. I mean, who's the only other 41-year-old quarterback? Tom Brady that's done well? I mean, all the rest have been terrible by their late 30s and just completely lose their arm.
I don't even know if it's the arm. I think it's just when you get to be older, your decision making, your quickness ends up going down. And yeah, obviously there's going to be, I wouldn't have any arm strength concerns with Rodgers, but you have to remember too, when Tom Brady's playing until he's 45, Jeff and I used to get into arguments about it all the time that he's I can't believe he showed up to Augusta National and brought his own lunch with him. And that's a part of it. Dude didn't consume one molecule of sugar for 20 straight years. That's the only reason that he's able to do that. Hit the strictest diet, work out at this time of day. And apparently even helps your hair grow if you're Tom Brady, I suppose. But Aaron Rodgers is not doing that. He's taking ayahuasca in Panama or something.
Yeah, and he's got the vice presidency, right? He's he's obviously preoccupied with the vice presidency run here coming up too. So yeah, he's definitely got his hands on a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I'm sorry. He's only 40. He will turn 41 in December. And although he was, quote, able to play last year, he didn't play last year. So it does worry me that dude just blew it his Achilles too, Connor.
Yeah, and he just talked about how HIV was a government conspiracy,
Jesus
apparently.
Christ, really?
He just came out of that. Yeah, it was yesterday. So yeah, Rodgers, I mean, interesting cat, and for sure is definitely doing his own thing and is not on a strict diet like you mentioned. That's the biggest thing. I mean, that's the only way, in my opinion, that Brady survived that long and played that long, was just always dialed in on what mattered most. I mean, Rodgers is just off in caves doing whatever. So who knows? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he tears his Achilles again, to be honest.
Well,
no sugar in mushrooms.
Yeah, no. Is that true? Is there no sugar in mushrooms, even the magic ones?
I'm not sure. I don't believe so.
Okay, well, you research that and get back to the audience on that front. The other part of it, too, is like, I do think that there is something to, like you said, he's now talking about HIV, just every crazy thing that he is coming out and saying. It's like he's like testing it out, throwing shit at the wall for a career after this. I'm not lying. Like, maybe he knows he's kind of cooked, and when he's cooked, he can be like, oh, yeah, some conspiracy took me out, and then he can just start a podcast after and make millions.
Start a podcast tomorrow and he would instantly be making a ton of money. He is doesn't have a career probably in the NFL as like a professional talker, but he definitely does in the podcast industry because he says just some of the most outrageous stuff and has beliefs but I mean other people believe some of what he says too. So I'm not, I don't want to offend your entire audience, but he definitely has some beliefs that are out there on, some people like it.
Yeah, it seems like he's honestly testing out crazy person theories, Ryan.
We could have just got this guy the Jeopardy gig. This probably doesn't happen, right? Like he toes the line, the corporate gig. He was good as the Jeopardy host. I'm a Jeopardy fan. I enjoyed it. I think he probably stays more buttoned up. We don't get into all the dark web stuff and all the conspiracy theories that he's run with. But unfortunately, we had to put Blossom in there and do some other stuff. Unfortunately, but yeah, I mean, let's just circle back, retire, get him the Jeopardy gig, and he can maybe end his career in a little bit better light than how he's handled himself the last couple of years.
Hey, maybe things are going great for him. We just don't know about it. I mean, the guys out here speaking the truth. We're all afraid to acknowledge the truth, Connor. That's what
we're just the sheep. We're the sheep. We don't know anything. He was dating that one chick, right? That actress, or Shailene Woodley, and it seemed like that had the wheels fall off there. He was dating Danica Patrick for a little bit, and that was like he was normal, normal-ish, and then. It must be. I'll blame Shailene Woodley. I feel like maybe she just like let him, toss him off the edge. Then he was in caves doing ayahuasca. So I think really is what set him off. Because before that, he seemed at least kind of normal.
Yeah, when they started dating, I think he started making his own toothpaste, which would just that should have been a red flag right there.
Toothpaste, soap, deodorant, medicine. They started doing all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, kudos to you for living off the land and not pumping chemicals into your armpits and whatever else you need to do, but like it seems to have led to spiraling of regality. But again, not to just bash the entire audience. I'm sure there's some people that enjoy his random Joe Rogan appearances and whatever else comes out of there. The McAfee appearances sometimes are definitely interesting to watch, and it's interesting to see if he can play football this year because obviously the AFC East is pretty open in terms of what's going on in Buffalo, who I still think is a contender. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure Cuss wants 16, 17 games out of A-Rod to see what happens.
Yeah, we've had to downgrade you there, Frozen Man. Sorry, we're going to start calling you Elsa for the rest of the time on the show. But Connor, in terms of the AFC East. Yes, the Bills are not as good as they've been the past few years, but I do feel like the Bills kind of more, obviously they haven't won as much as the Patriots did, but even when the Patriots had those down years after the Super Bowls and they had to let some guys go and rebuild, everything was always okay because they had Tom Brady. I kind of feel like the same thing is happening with the Bills and Josh Allen, that as long as they have Josh Allen, they're going to be pretty good.
Yeah, it's funny because the same thing almost happened with the Chiefs basically the last few years because we've been poking holes at the Chiefs and being like, well, it's just Patrick Mahomes and like this isn't that good or he doesn't have receivers and things like that. And they just find a way to win the division basically every year. I think this year is probably going to be a good test of that because, they lost Stephon Diggs. There's some defensive players that they lost. I think their offensive line is still good, but, they have way more holes than they used to. Now, that being said, there are rumors that they want to trade up in the draft big time to land, maybe even as high as to get like a Roma Dunza or, Malik Neighbors if one of them falls a little bit. And then definitely a guy like Brian Thomas. Worst case, maybe like an A.D. Mitchell at 28. So I think that immediately they still have good pass catchers too, like Dalton Kincaid, Khalil Shakir can eat over the middle of the field. Like they still have other guys, but I think adding like one of those more alphas would go a long way. And instantly people I think would forget about Stephon Diggs, who frankly looked washed at the end of the second half of last year, had like one good game in the last 9.
Yeah, so they make it to the second round of the playoffs, Noonan, with Stephon Diggs being a corpse. and they're like, oh my God, they lost Stefan Diggs. I think it's more sort of like the depth and the back end, especially on the defense, that you're going to see from them where, yeah, if this guy gets hurt, then they maybe don't have enough guys to step up and replace them. A lot like what the Rams have been dealing with for the past few years, Noonan, where if their star goes down, they literally have no one else behind them, and then they're screwed. The Bills feel like if they can just stay healthy enough, they should be fine.
I think he was clearly injured last year too. I don't know if my bandwidth is good. My low, my back, am I?
You're back. You're a bit delayed, but you're always kind of delayed, so
okay.
That's fine.
Story of my life. Yeah, I mean, I think they're still contenders. Obviously, I don't think that there's anyone else that's really separating themselves. So, yeah, I think Diggs was injured. I think he's a nice addition to Houston, but I wouldn't just lock in the Jets here being like the team that's going to just run to this division lead here. So Pats are obviously still scrambling. Miami has a lot of questions, I think, on both sides, especially in the up front, both offensive line and defensive line. So I wouldn't rule out any team that has Josh Allen. He does Superman stuff for a reason, and I think they'll kind of be back a little bit.
Well, I mean, it speaks to the skill of Josh Allen, potentially this Bills team, Connor. But I also don't think the Jets or Miami are like that good. Like they're not dominant teams. They can be beaten.
Yeah, Miami has a ton of holes. I mean, their offensive line consistently doesn't give Tua enough time to do anything more than throw slants to Tyreek and and everyone else there. So it's like really tough, I think, to envision Miami just absolutely dominating too. And their defense has tons of holes as well. I mean, we see it the Bills drop like 40 on Miami basically every single time they play. And so I think the Jets are interesting because their defense has a good kind of core there. It's just we've seen so much bad offense. And then they also added, I think 3 offensive linemen, could address offensive line in the draft with our boy, Fautanu, locking up that 10-1 there. But no, I think that would help. And then they added Mike Williams, who is always injured, but they have depth issues there too. It's like Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams. If Mike Williams goes down or Garrett Wilson goes down, I mean, the depth of wide receiver is just so thin. Like the guys behind him are just basically nobodies.
Here's one draft prop number 3. And I was looking at it. I want to get your take. Quarterback selected in the first round over 4.5 is -180. From the tea leaves I can read with the amount of quarterback hungry teams, Connor, it has to be over that, doesn't it? There's going to be 4 that go in the first 5 picks.
Yeah, there's going to be 4 in the first 5 picks. And then you're basically betting on one of Michael Penix or Bo Nix to go in the first round. Personally, I think that Bo Nix will probably be a first round pick. Sean Payton has, been pretty vocal about potentially wanting to upgrade the quarterback position. So have the Raiders been not saying that they're not done. Bo Nix is basically kind of that high floor, low ceiling player where he'll basically just plug him into a system. He can do that, but he's not going to do anything more. Michael Penix, I have a hard time getting around to. 4 season-ending injuries, 24 years old, lefty, transferred. I mean, there's just a lot of red flags with him. And, teams talk about him in the first round or popular mock drafters, but I have a hard time getting there. So I think I'd prefer just to play Bo Nix first round if you do want to play it instead of taking the -180 on either, just because I'm not really buying the Penix side.
What do you make of Penix? And if they don't go to the national championship game, Ryan, is he a surefire first rounder?
Yeah, I mean, the Texas game was great. He played really well there. But again, all of it was he lit him up down the field. All the questions that you have of him as a player is the short, intermediate stuff, the ability to get the ball out quickly. He didn't have to do that. He had, pretty 3 dynamic wide receiver weapons, an offensive line that's going to have multiple tackles drafted in the top 40 picks. So we did have a nice little offense built around him too. Again, it's unique. Quarterback is in and of itself. So you can have a situation where there are rumors that Denver at 12, the Raiders at 13 have interest in both of these guys. But that doesn't mean that they also are going to go in the first round, because they can very easily go at 12 or 13 or slide all the way out. I think we see fewer teams nowadays get in. There used to be a lot of thought of teams trading back into the late first round to get that extra year. We just see that less and less every year. It's also very convenient to mock a situation where it's a team like Denver trades down into the late 20s to be able to get Bo Nix there. I think that's an easy thing to do in a mock draft. Executing that on the clock on Thursday night is a little bit of a different beast. I think it makes sense, but can they thread the needle and make that happen? That's a different question. So again, if you don't have the answer at quarterback, you are a non-viable contender or team in the league. these teams don't have an answer at quarterback. So shooting your shot makes a ton of sense. I cannot believe, I continue to bang the drum here, that Denver is going into the season with Jarrett Stidham at quarterback. Like Sean Payton has been dubbed a quarterback whisperer. They basically just handled draft picks and the cap in New Orleans his entire time there. Like it was just pretend monopoly money. Like he's got all his Walmart money now in Denver. Like they're going to do whatever they need to do if they need to punt on future years. Because they're right. A lot of talk of like Denver doesn't have the ammo to get up. Like I think Denver's in the mix to jump the Vikings and get up in there into the top 4 to make a play with JJ McCarthy. Like they need a quarterback.
Connor, right now, how about this? Instead of the 4 quarterbacks in the first round, we can take Bo Nix under 32.5 draft position at plus 130.
Yeah, I think that makes a little bit more sense, especially at plus money on there instead of laying the minus 180 on basically Penix or Nix, just because I'm not really buying the Penix stuff at all. But the Nix stuff makes a ton of sense. I don't know how they get it done. I would not be surprised to see Denver take someone at 12 and then use their future first round pick to trade back into the first round in the mid to late 20s and get their guy Bo Nix. I could also see them just taking Bo Nix at 12. I mean, honestly, like if you're going to take him at 25, like why not just take him at 12? I understand there's some value, proposition there, but it's not like this is like, it's not a fantasy football draft. It's not like if you miss on your guy, like, oh, you'll just get the next one. Like it just doesn't happen. Like in the NFL draft, you need a guy, you got to get your guy. And that's how you do it. So like, I would not be surprised to see them pick him at 12.
All right. That's 3 draft props. Can we squeeze 2 more out of you?
Oh yeah. We got a couple more here. All right, let's hear another one that we like. Dallas Turner over 9.5 was the one that we really like. So he's being mocked to the Falcons at 8. Like, I mean, routinely we're talking like 80-90% of mock drafts, but all the rumblings behind the scenes are that he's not their top edge and that they're considering trading down. Like they are the most likely top 10, outside of the Chargers and Cardinals, past that pick, the most likely to trade down, I think, for someone looking to trade up for Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors, at pick 8. So I think that the Falcons are very likely to trade down at pick 8, even if they do stand pat. The rumors that they like Liatu Latu over him, whose defensive coordinator was actually his coach in college at Washington for a year. And then if his medical red flags check out, a guy like Latu, I think definitely stacks up with Dallas Turner as being one of the best. So like, I think that Dallas Turner potentially, could not even be a top 10 pick based on how things are trending for him. So we're getting over 9.5 years around even money. I would play it up to like minus 130, minus 140, just because there's basically only one out for him in the top 8 or 9, with the Bears preferring Jared Verse instead over Dallas Turner too.
What book are you finding that at right now? Because I'm on Bet365 and they've already moved the number to 10.5 instead of 9.5.
Man, Caesars and DraftKings were both 9.5 as of about an hour ago.
Okay. So good to know. So there are multiple places to find these things. Do you find a lot of discrepancy between some of the books and like having a draft position off just to adjust the price? Or does eventually one market move, then everyone eventually follows it within a few days?
Yeah, I mean, Circa actually did a great job of this, and they've had some wild numbers. I mean, they had Adonai Mitchell at 31.5 about an hour ago. The whole market was painted 27.5. 28 was obviously the key number because of the Bills, and then they can go before that. But yeah, generally most of these like DraftKings, Caesars, FanDuel, all generally are pretty close to each other. But like you have off ones like Bet365 always has stale numbers. Circa generally has just like random numbers because they move their stuff manually. Like they don't have algorithms that move it. So like I max bet AD Mitchell under 31.5 and move from 31.5 to like 27.5, like which is not a normal move for most other books. So I think that there is some rogue ones. You just got to look at some of the, off market books. ESPN Bet Fanatics too always have just like some random stuff. If you can get down there, obviously limits are kind of low.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the limits are on Bet365. Also, not an offshore book, by the way. It's a legal book.
It is.
It happens to be, I think it's the biggest book in the world, isn't it?
I guess because it's in Europe too, right? That's where it came from.
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's limited in the United States, which is really weird.
This is the most classic, U.S. centric take for me because I just like don't know much about sports betting in the other countries in terms of which like operators they have. So me not knowing that Bet365 is so massive overseas, it's just like should not come as that much of a surprise as an American, to be honest.
Yeah, because it's not in most states, is it, Noonan?
Not in Illinois.
What's in what are like? Doesn't Illinois have weird? It might be just New Jersey and maybe some other ones too. But I know I don't even think it. Paul, is it in Ontario in Canada, or is it one of the ones that's not?
Bet365, yeah, it's in Ontario.
Yeah, so it's legal in Ontario, but it also like operates gray market outside of the legal markets in Canada as well, because you can still get away with that province to province. It's really bizarre. Noonan, are there any of them that you really like? Did we lose Noonan?
So Connor talked about a few that I think are interesting. Oh,
yeah, you're like on a 5-second delay here, pal.
What are we doing here?
You might need to log
Amateur
out.
hour?
You might need to log out and log back in and find your internet.
Okay. Well, I'll talk.
Connor, you hit us with another one then.
I'm plugged in. I'm gonna log back out and come back in.
All right, Connor,
All right,
you
sounds
vamp
good.
on this one. We'll keep going.
Are we live right now, or are we just rolling behind the scenes? But no, okay. So we'll go with another one here. I did talk about Jared Verse being one of the Bears targets. So from my understanding, they really like Roma Dunza at 9. So like if Roma Dunza is there at 9, I think that he'll be their pick. But if he's not there at 9, which I think is very likely, a team could. I mean, the Giants could take him 6th overall. Some team could trade up at 8. Could trade up at 7. Jared Verse is 4-1 to go 9th overall. I've heard that they really, really like a guy like Jared Verse. He, doesn't really strike most people as someone who would be worthy of a top 10 pick. He's a little bit older, but he's very much kind of in the Darnell Wright mold of like a 9th overall pick. And just based on the, rumblings in Chicago, they really like Jared Verse. So I think that he would be a good pairing with Montez Sweat. And they've talked about, I think Poles went on record and said, we need to look at whether we want a wide receiver or whether we want an edge. And, we'll divide into groups and see which one of those we want. So he almost like kind of tipped his hand there a little bit. And last year, I mean, they haven't done a really good job of keeping tight lips in that organization, because Darnell Wright was kind of like rumored to be the Bears pick for a while too before. And then now we're seeing steam pick up about Jared Verse publicly too. So for me, that kind of is even more signal. And generally when I know that the sources are working out to be the best, because you hear him tell you something, you're like, maybe. And then you hear public sources start to kind of mock the same thing. It's a little bit off record. So I think Verse at 4-1 right now to go 9th overall is pretty interesting.
Do you find it interesting that the Bears might go defense at pick number 9 and not try to enhance their number 1 overall pick? Or do you think that they accomplish that by getting Keenan Allen?
Yeah, I think they'd love to get a wide receiver if possible. I don't buy them going offensive line, which offensive line does make sense to me, but they love like Braxton Jones, their left tackle, who they got, I think in the 6th round 2 years ago. And he's been like league average in most metrics per PFF or whatever, which is, I mean, again, for a 6th round pick, getting a league average starting left tackle is totally fine. But they seem to like him even more than that. I think he'll continue to develop. And so if you added Darnell Wright last year, they signed a couple of interior guys, as well in free agency. So for me, like it's just adding up for them to probably add another edge rusher, pass rusher here with Jared Verse or someone like that, or potentially a wide receiver. Because again, if you're rolling in the season, you're Chicago Bears and you have Caleb Williams, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and now Roma Dunza or Malik Neighbors, like that offense has to be good immediately. Otherwise, Caleb Williams is basically a bust, from day one.
Connor, if I set the line right now at Ryan Noonan, good internet, yes or no, and I put the no at -300, which side would you take?
I'm in the -300. I've been down this rodeo too many times to know that sometimes it goes kaput and he's just out.
Yeah, you do shows with him all the time. I mean, you gotta get this figure. What is Chicago bad internet?
It hasn't been this bad. It hasn't been this bad in a while.
You see, your audio is not bad now, so that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I have no idea. I'm plugged in. Nothing else on. Who knows?
Tell the wife to stop streaming Love Island.
Well, you don't need to tell her to do that. Noonan, if you want to come on, or if your wife wants to come on, and I can talk about Love Island with her, I mean, that might be a better scenario here and ratings for the show. We lose him again? Oh, there he is. He's just, his bandwidth is very low. Just leave him on audio. We don't need to cut to Noonan. We'll cut to the wide. Noonan, you can be like the great Oz here. Hit us with a draft prop.
Oh, did he go?
He left. You work with this guy every day?
So I don't know. Somehow, I mean, what is it? This is amateur hour right now on the internet section. I think he's back. Let's see, or maybe he's just frozen.
I think he might just.
This happened last draft season. Last draft season was real bad, but I've moved since. I'm plugged in Ethernet cable, no problems in the stream. I just show up for Mayo and go completely sideways. Who knows?
All right. Well, now that you're here as the voice of Ryan Noonan, give us a draft prop. Yeah, stop trying to add your video. Just don't worry about your video, pal. It's really killing your game here. Jesus Christ, Noonan. I'm not cutting this out either. People need to know about your terrible internet.
Leave it in.
Oh, it's getting left in. Oh, it might make for the worst podcast, worst video of all time. But the people need to know. This is not on me. It's not on you, Connor. It's on Ryan Noonan. You can even message him on Twitter and tell him how terrible. You can donate to his GoFundMe to get him some fucking internet.
He needs to shame his internet provider so that
Pat,
other
when
people
you
in the
asked
Chicago
me-
area know not to buy there.
Yeah, when you asked me if we should invite someone else on, I said Noonan, but now I'm rescinding that invite, and so Noonan's getting booted here. I think. Look, we have video back. But can we get audio for more than 5 seconds?
It just keeps disconnecting, and
We don't need video. We don't need video, Noonan. Just turn off your video and you can just talk. How about that? He's gone? All right. Just don't even let him back in the room if he tries to join. Connor, let's try to get out of here with a little bit of dignity. Give us some more winners rapid fire style.
All right, we talked about Penix not going to the first round. I bet over 32.5 there. I think that's a good one. Oh, you know what? I'll give a prop that Noonan bet here just as a little bit of dignity for Noonan. So one that he released today was Miami to draft an offensive lineman. That we're looking at like minus 120 at FanDuel, is minus 150 at DraftKings. They have massive holes up front. Teron Armstead hasn't played more than 14 games since 2019. Robert Hunt left for free agency. Both guard spots are a major question. So Tua needs time. If they're going to do anything more than just throw quick passes to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, they need offensive line help. And most mock drafts are suggesting as such right now. So I like that one. Green Bay first position O-line was minus 125 at FanDuel. Minus 250 at DK is a little bit much, but I think it should be closer to that minus 250 mark here. Some of the plugged in people, really like offensive line for the draft here for Green Bay. And then the Rams to draft an offensive lineman is interesting. We saw Peter Schrager go on his podcast the other day, who's buddies with Sean McVay, and is like, Sean McVay is his first round draft pick since Jared Goff in 2016. He's picking an offensive player. I'll put my name on it, everything. And that's still plus money to get an offensive lineman there. And you can find offense as well in other areas. So there's four or five rapid fire there for you.
I will throw some cold water on the Schrager thing. He once said to bet the Jets because it was on 9/11 or the Giants or something like that. They didn't win.
God, no, that's terrible. But they
were going to be extra motivated,
The motivation thing is just so dumb. I think that's like these guys are professional athletes. They're motivated to play to make more money every day. I don't know. Sometimes it can make sense, but in that instance, it doesn't make sense.
All right. Well, I hope that you sold some subscriptions from being on this show, and then you can give the money to Noonan to get internet. That would be nice.
Yeah, I think.
Son of a bitch.
What? Even if we sell one subscription today, that'd be great. You can find all our stuff at 44.com. You can find good internet over at Connor Allen NFL on Twitter. Appreciate you having us on, Pat. We'll apologize for Noonan in advance because I'm not even sure if he'll be able to apologize given the audio.
I'm right here, man. I'm right here.
Are you there? Are you calling us live from the welfare office?
Yes, I'm in the poll. This is why I told you I don't have Shohei Ohtani money. I keep a close eye on my pennies because I don't have many of them. And obviously this makeshift internet has failed me today. But yeah, I apologize. I'm not sure what happened there. They were all good, but that's not how this went down. So some longer shots real quick on the exit. Team position, the first player drafted. There's a couple of plus money ones I think are interesting. Seattle 15-1 to take a corner. They have a need there, new defensive coordinator. They want someone in that Kyle Hamilton role. Cooper DeJean visiting there, I think, today. Very, very interesting, and it fits a need there. 15-1 on DraftKings for Seattle to take a corner. They've basically turned over a lot of their secondary. Seattle or San Francisco plus 425 to take a defensive lineman or an edge. I think could be very interesting there at 31 with maybe one of those interior defensive linemen if they fall, and that's plus money there as well. I think those are both pretty interesting. So try to get those takes out for about 30 minutes.
Well, if you do hit those, then maybe we can bring you back with video after you get all your bills paid.
Man, I would love that.
Collections is calling him halfway through the show. He has to get off the internet because he doesn't want that broadcasted live. I know how it goes, Noonan. I see right through your scam here, all right?
I got this Akshay money. I got Scotty parlay last week. I got this money. I just haven't paid the bills yet.
Yeah, I mean, when you bet golfers at 4-1, even when you win, you still lose, don't you? They take away your phone.
It's true. No, I parlayed it with UConn and South Carolina women. So I got a 26 on Scotty. So it worked out pretty well.
That is pretty good. All right, that will do it on the Pat Mayo Experience. Apologies for some of the technical difficulties. But again, go follow Noonan on X, formerly known as Twitter, and just give him shit the entire day because he deserves it for fucking up the show. All right? Although it probably turned out better this way anyway. I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me at the PME. Smash a like and use code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy. Right now, get yourself a match deposit of up to $100. All right? I'll see you next time.
Mayo Experience! Experience!